This is the Atlantic Amsterdam. China claims it is a civilian deep-sea fish farm anchored between China and South Korea. But look closer. The structure is a repurposed offshore oil rig, equipped with a designated helipad, 6 operational floors, an operations center, and extensive housing. This grid documents a surrounding network of at least 13 high-tech, solar-powered buoys that China has installed across the area since 2018, along with massive underwater aquaculture cages extending dozens of meters below the surface. South Korea dispatched a civilian research vessel, the Onuri, to survey these steel structures. They were intercepted and physically blocked by Chinese Coast Guard ships, forcing the researchers to abandon their mission entirely. Deploying armed Coast Guard vessels to block scientists from a fish farm is a severe escalation. To understand why China is guarding this specific patch of water with such intensity, we have to look at the legal status of the Yellow Sea itself. This map shows the core geographic problem of the region. Under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, coastal states can claim an exclusive economic zone, or EEZ, a boundary granting control over marine resources extending 200 nautical miles from their shores. But the Yellow Sea is less than 400 miles wide at its broadest point. There is simply not enough room for both countries to claim their full legal zones. South Korea demands a strict median line, splitting the water exactly down the middle. China demands an equitable principle formula, factoring in their longer coastline to claim a much larger share of the sea. This map highlights the resulting Provisional Measures Zone, a shared area meant to be a temporary fix while they negotiated a permanent boundary. 25 years later, that boundary remains completely unresolved, and the red dots show exactly where China is dropping its new structures. This specific maritime neighborhood is already highly volatile. Just to the north lies the Northern Limit Line, the disputed maritime boundary separating the two Koreas. That northern boundary has seen decades of lethal military conflict. In 2010 alone, a North Korean torpedo attack sank the South Korean naval ship Cheonan, killing 46 sailors. And months later, North Korean artillery shelled civilian settlements on Yeonpyeong Island. By anchoring massive steel platforms inside the temporary zone to the south, China is exploiting a chaotic, unresolved legal void. They are establishing a permanent physical footprint in highly contested waters without crossing the line into a formal declaration of war. Defense analysts refer to this specific approach as gray zone warfare. It relies on using ambiguous, civilian-branded infrastructure to slowly seize territory and alter strategic realities on the ground, keeping every action deliberately below the threshold that would trigger an armed military response. South Korea commands one of the most advanced, heavily armed militaries on the planet. Yet when a foreign power builds an oil rig in their claimed waters, Seoul issues diplomatic protests and sends observation ships. They refuse to physically dismantle or remove the platforms. This chart illustrates the reason for that paralysis. In 2017, when South Korea deployed the US-backed THAAD missile defense system, Beijing retaliated economically. They restricted tourism, boycotted retail stores, and severed commercial ties, inflicting billions of dollars in economic damage on South Korean businesses almost overnight. China does not need to threaten a naval strike to defend its offshore structures. The memory of that financial devastation successfully deters Seoul from enforcing its own maritime claims, weaponizing economic dependency to secure physical territory. Focusing strictly on fish yields and boundary lines overlooks the true geographic value of this water. The Yellow Sea sits directly between the headquarters of China's Northern Fleet and the largest American overseas military base at Camp Humphreys. In February 2026, the United States Air Force deployed 10 F-16 fighter jets to conduct maneuvers over the Yellow Sea. During the exercise, Chinese J-16 fighter aircraft scrambled to meet them, resulting in a tense mid-air standoff over the international waters. Officials in Seoul were furious. The South Korean Ministry of National Defense and the Joint Chiefs of Staff had not been fully briefed on the American exercises in advance. They immediately lodged protests with U.S. Forces Korea, alarmed that their ally was running unilateral, high-risk drills directly in their maritime backyard. South Korea finds itself completely trapped. On one side, an expanding China builds unmovable infrastructure in their waters. On the other, an aggressive United States military operates unilaterally in their airspace. Look at this recent deployment of the Fujian, China's most advanced aircraft carrier. Following the installation of the rigs, Beijing began declaring temporary no-sail zones in the exact same disputed waters to conduct massive naval exercises. When you combine those carrier drills with the 13 solar-powered observation buoys and a 6-story offshore platform equipped with a helipad, the civilian facade vanishes. These structures have the precise capability to act as a dual-use early warning radar network and an operational staging ground. By securing this territory, China is quietly building a strategic maritime buffer zone. The goal is to project surveillance and military presence outward, physically pushing the United States Air Force and Navy further away from the Chinese mainland. The Atlantic Amsterdam provides the physical foundation for this expansion. China has successfully leveraged a localized dispute over fishing quotas to establish a permanent, frontline buffer zone for the next great superpower collision.